Oh, shucky durns. I'm so sorry. I needed to hit one more button and I just didn't do it. Wow. Welcome, everybody. What an exciting day. Just exciting stuff going on all around the world and stuff we need to pay attention to, stuff we need to be aware of. I was watching a really interesting video on Dutch sense, and it's basically about a super. Um, wave that reverses back on itself and can go into reverse time. And evidently, this has been a weapon since 1988. And there have been a couple proclamations about it, but people just kind of wrote it off as being Star Wars type stuff. And oh gosh, how exciting! Even though 90% of it's way beyond my capability to understand, but really, really interesting stuff. So let's see who all is here. We've got. Oh, come on. I really, I'm gonna trade in this Apple and see if I can't get something I can use, because sometimes it just is not as responsive as I was like. Okay, so Joel Eichner, South Florida DCL, welcome. Theoxorus, welcome. And thank you, Theoxorus. Great comment. Diana 2. 940. Utah Mike, welcome. Sue Me and KP Heathen, Holly Evans, Edith Wallace. That's a new one. Welcome. Little Lone Prepper, good to see you. The Celtic Grandma, good evening. You and I were just on a channel together here just a little while ago. Oh, I know where it was. It was the Roaming Preppers. So anyhow, okay, so we're continuing on with our study of the U.S. government, the Constitution, civics, understanding U.S. government, and of course, it all boils down to the Constitution. So we're using this book, which is an American U.S. senior high school civics book. Explains a little bit about the U.S. government and the Constitution and how our government works. And so we will just continue on with that. We did not finish Chapter 7 last week, so if you'll remember, Article 1 of the Constitution is establishing the Congress, okay? It is a limiting article in the fact that it says that Congress can only do specifically what is listed in Article 1, Section 8. Now, that's later amended when we have, I believe it's the 16th Amendment, which authorizes Congress to levy taxes on your income. So those are the two areas where it says this is what Congress can do. Now, if it's not mentioned in those two areas, then Congress isn't supposed to be able to do it. So we've been talking about that. And so where we left off was the three things that Congress has, the three powers that Congress has, because remember, our government was set up with, kind of like a triangle where there was a checks and balances system against each element of that triangle. And so, if the Supreme Court does something wrong, then basically Congress can write a new bill, a new law, and override what the Supreme Court has said. And then, of course, the Congress has authority over the president, and the president has authority over Congress through the veto power of legislation and other different things, as well as limited authority over the Supreme Court. One of the key limiting factors of the Supreme Court was Marbury versus Madison back in the early 1800s, and basically the Supreme Court gave itself ultimate authority. So, at some point we're going to have to discuss how we can overcome that and make it back to a better, more even-keeled government where Congress and the president have the same authority as does the Supreme Court. Now, there's a fantastic book, and I strongly recommend it. It's called The Liberty Amendments by a fellow by the name of Mark Levin, a constitutional attorney. Really good discussion in there about how Congress should be given the authority to overrule any decision that the Supreme Court makes. Okay, and so they can do that through an adoption process or a revocation process. Really neat how he wrote that out. I'm really kind of impressed with it. So we shall see how that works. But let's talk about this So one of the things that we take a look at is, how does a bill become law? So number one, it's introduced in the House. Now remember, Article 1 in Section 7 specifically says that all revenue generating bills must originate in the House of Representatives. Okay, so for everything except for, for specifically for a revenue generating bill, this process applies. But if it's anything other than a revenue generating bill, it can also initiate in the Senate. So we'll go through that leg here in just a minute. Hello, Cats and Prepping. Welcome. So it's introduced in the House. It's referred to a House committee. Then the House committee refers it to a subcommittee. We went through all those standing committees, ad hoc committees, and everything else last week. We listed all of those for both the House of Representatives and for the Senate. Then it's reported by the full committee to the House, to the Committee on Rules. The Committee on Rules takes a look at it. They pass it off to the Speaker of the House, and the Speaker of the House then has the authority to put it to the floor for a vote. Okay, so if it goes to the vote, then it has a standard process we'll go through after we talk about the Senate, because it's the same for both sides. Okay, so in the Senate, it's introduced to the Senate. It's referred to a Senate committee. Then it's referred to a subcommittee. The subcommittee then refers it back up to the full House. Back up to the full committee, and then the full committee then passes it to the Senate. Now, the Senate does the same thing. Remember, there were several bills that were passed by the committee that were sent to what was his name from Nevada, Harry Reid. They were sent to Harry Reid, where Harry Reid decided he didn't want to take it to a vote, so he just sat on it for quite a while. Nancy Pelosi sat on quite a few bills forever, and they never made it to the floor for a vote. And of course, the Republicans do the same thing. If they agree with it, they're going to, something that the Speaker or the Senate Majority Leader likes, they're going to promote it forward for a vote. If it's something they don't like, they don't have to. That's just the way their bills are. Now, there is a standing rule that was voted into place by the Senate on itself. And so they have this thing that they have to get it out of committee with 60% of the committee voting to discharge it from the committee and to report it back to the full committee or to the floor of the Senate for a vote. Okay, and so that's the filibuster rule. And so you have to have at least 60% voting for in order for it to get out. So now there have been times when the rules have been suspended, okay? And one of those famous times was when Harry Reid wanted to pass Obamacare. He could not get the 60 votes to move it towards the normal process. So he suspended the rules, and it passed and went to the full Senate for a vote, where it passed 51-49. So even though there are rules, the House Speaker and the Senate Majority Leader can break the rules whenever they want. So it doesn't give you a warm fuzzy. I can guarantee you that much. Well, good. Welcome, John. Glad to see you there, sitting there with Joel. So hope you enjoy what we're seeing here. I don't know how old you are, but I'm gonna guess probably at least high school. Maybe younger, maybe older. I don't know, but that's just an immediate impression. So, because I don't think of Joel as being an older fellow. Okay, so now we've got it down to where both sides have passed it. Okay, they may have passed different bills. There may be some disagreement in the terminology. There may be some different disagreement in some of the provisions. So now it goes to a conference committee, and the conference committee consists of an equal number of people from the House and from the Senate. So they kind of reword everything, and then they send it back to their appropriate branches of the government to vote on. So if they both agree on that, then it goes back, and then it's put out as a passed bill. It goes to the president, and the president has 4 actions that he can take. Number 1, he can sign it, in which case it becomes law on the effective date that is written into the bill when the appropriate effective date is. Number 2, he can veto it. So It's no law. It does not become a law unless it's overridden by both the House and the Senate. And remember, that requires a 2/3 majority in order for them to overcome the president's veto. I think it's 2/3. It might be 3/4. That's going to be in Section 3. So Section 2. Section 1 is Congress, Section 2 is the executive branch, and Section 3 is the judicial branch. So let me get my glasses back on here. I can't find it, but I'm fairly sure it's 2/3. Let me see. Let me see. Everything else in Section 2 is 2/3, so I'm fairly certain that is 2. Anyhow, we can look that up. I could be wrong, but I'm fairly certain. I'm 95% certain it's 2/3 to override a veto. The third one is that the president can do nothing. Okay, and if he does nothing, then it becomes a bill. Okay, it becomes a law without his approval. Okay, so that's called a pocket veto. And then the fourth one is that if he is in that 10 days before Congress adjourns, then and he does a pocket veto, he just doesn't do anything, and Congress adjourns, then it's going to be more than 10 days from the time that they signed the bill and transmitted it to him for approval, and he has not yet signed it. Then when they come back, it's going to be more than that amount of time, so it does not become a law. So in 2 of those cases, it does become a law. In 2 of those cases, it does not become a law. Vast majority of time, it does become a law. Now, there's a lot of discussion right now about whether or not we should allow a line item veto. There are things I like about a line item veto. There are things that I don't like about a line item veto. Because, the president can basically say, under a line item veto, he can say, I accept this bill except for this, right? And he just crosses out that line, and then he vetoes that line, but everything else is approved. And, so that I can see how that can be a two-edged sword. It has its advantages, it has its disadvantages. I would much rather see an amendment or a change to the rules in both the House and the Senate that we have clean bills. And what I mean by that is, for example, in order to get Nancy Pelosi's approval for one of the Defense Appropriations Acts, they had to include I think it was $30 million grant to BART, which is the Bay Area Rapid Transit Authority, basically their metro, their rail line system. And it was to install a new line of rail for BART, for the Bay Area Rapid Transit Authority. Well, it just so happens that it was going to go from the hub out to one of her major donors, which was a company called Salesforce. And so it was going to have a new terminal right there in front of Salesforce's office building. Well, guess what else? It went right by, and there was going to be a stop right next to it, a building that her husband owned. What happens when all of a sudden you have a mass transit station put in front of your office building? Do you think that increases the overall value of that office building? Absolutely. So she said, I will support this Defense Appropriations Act as long as you include my rider onto the bill. So she was allowed to attach that rider that says, you get my vote to support the defense of the country as long as you make my husband a rich man. Okay. So I think I don't like the line item veto. I do like limiting the number of riders. I do like passing clean bills. You either vote for or against the Defense Appropriations Act. Same thing. Right now, if you take a look at it, there's a big consternation about the fact that the Republicans voted against the bill that was going to authorize more border agents and several other things. Well, inside that bill, there was also a proviso for allowing people who cross the border illegally a more rapid citizenship process than the people who have waited legally and gone through the normal process. So, of course, Democrats or the Republicans didn't like that one part of the bill, so they voted against it. Now, the Democrats don't say that the Republicans voted against that part. What they're saying is, oh, you Republicans, you are hypocritical because you voted against adding 3,000 more Border Patrol agents and securing the border. Okay, see how these work? You can put in riders that make it so that if somebody votes against the rider, it looks like they're actually opposing the major bill, but they just don't like the rider. Okay, so we need clean bills. We need clean bills. That's all there is to it. Let me catch up with comments here. Okay, let me see. The way these politicians trade favors to get aye votes on a bill makes most of them bloated and very expensive. You are absolutely correct. And it was Ron Paul. And Ron Paul, was he from Texas or was he from Louisiana? But he was in the House. Rand Paul, his son, is a senator, I believe, from West Virginia. But anyhow, Ron Paul was one of those that was constantly showing the amount of graft and the amount of money that was wasted because it was going to these pet projects that people were adding in order to get some funding for their district, whatever that is. Gosh. Okay, so that's the first way that the Congress exercises control or power is through the legislative process. Hello, Triple G Farms, welcome. So they can pass laws or reject laws, okay? The second way that Congress exercises control over the government is through the budgetary process. So, and we've seen that, they wanted to increase the budget for the IRS. They wanted to increase the budget for different things. And I would be all for having a separate budget item with the Appropriations Act for each one of the executive offices, Department of Defense, and everything else. And clean bills, no more riders, okay? So that, if we want to increase the IRS by 30,000 agents and arm them and all these other provisions that have been passed recently, then that should be a separate bill and not included into a major omnibus bill. And an omnibus bill is all encompassing. So we're going to, pass a $39 trillion bill, and it's going to be this amount of money for this agency, this amount for this agency, and across the board, and then a major slush fund for whatever we think we want to buy. But so another way that the Congress exercises authority is over the budgetary Congress. If you don't do the budgetary process, if you don't do what we want you to do, then we aren't going to fund you, which is exactly what is happening with the contest between Congress and the president over securing the border, okay? So if you aren't going to close the border and restore it back to the way it was the day you took office, then we aren't going to give you any more money. Hello, Muskoka Oma. I have good news. I went and saw the doctor about my esophagus, and I'm scheduled for surgery for the 25th. So 1 month from today, I get to go under the knife, and they're going to redo my esophagus again. And so that's a Thursday night, and unfortunately, that's the Thursday. Well, I'm having the surgery done at 8 o'clock in the morning. So hopefully I'll have a voice by 8 o'clock that night because we'll be doing our fiction book club on this. Wow, what a great book. Look at that. I'm already a third of the way through it, and I just got it in the mail last Thursday or Friday, and already a third of the way through it. Great book. Love what Mr. Grammer's doing in that book, but we're scheduled to do our review of that book, and he's going to be with us on that evening, Thursday, the 25th of April. So it'll be after my throat surgery. So hopefully after all those tubes stuck down my throat, I'll have my voice back by 8 o'clock that night. If not, I'll let him do most of the talking. How's that? So some of the other things that they have is the oversight function. So they have the Civil Powers Act that was passed between Theodore Roosevelt and Richard Nixon. And in a delayed response to Lyndon Johnson's conduct of the Vietnam War in 1973, Congress passed the War Powers Act over President Nixon's veto. This act requires presidents to obtain congressional approval before committing U.S. forces to a combat zone. It also requires them to notify Congress within 48 hours of committing troops to foreign soil. In addition, the president must withdraw troops within 60 days unless Congress votes to declare war. Well, guess what? We have not had a declared war since World War II. We declared war against Japan, and that was about it. I'm not sure if we declared war against Germany. I know Germany declared war against us, but we have not declared war against anybody. Everything has been a, quote, police action since then. So we are in violation of that for sure. Of course, congressional review, you have the House Oversight Committee and the Senate Oversight Committee. We talked about those last week. And then, so Triple G, this book, basically, you can tell this guy's political interest very easily by reading his book, but he makes the case, which is a very valid case, that there's a lot of bad guys who are coming across an open border. And now that we have, the Sixth Circuit said that you can't restrict these bad guys who came across the border, broke our laws and came across illegally from owning a weapon, so that's how this happens, okay? And the name of the book is Infiltrated, the America Overrun series. Thank you, Little Lone Prepper and Muskoka Alma. So let me see. So Pat Butler, hi, welcome. Good to see you. So made it to a live? Yes, you did. And had a long day, took brother to the old family home, and then had an appointment with medical supplier for replacement equipment. My pups think they have been neglected. Oh, I know how dogs are. If I'm gone for 8 hours, mine go crazy when I come home. But anyhow, so congressional review is another power that they have within that oversight function, and then confirmation of presidential appointments. So Senate has the sole authority to approve presidential appointments. So all of the cabinet members have to be approved by the Senate. Judges have to be approved by the Senate. Ambassadors and certain other high positions have to be approved by the Senate once they are nominated by the president. So, if they don't approve the people he nominates, then that's another way of controlling, or at least checks and balances within the system. Then, of course, the ultimate one is impeachment. So let's talk about the impeachment process here for just a second. So what most people don't understand is there is an impeachment, and then there is a trial. Okay, so impeachment and trial. Think of impeachment as being the political way of saying indictment. Okay, so you go off to a grand jury, which is basically what the House of Representatives is. The grand jury takes a look at the evidence and decides whether or not they want to submit it, want to hold you in violation of a law. Then they're going to turn it over to the district attorney, who is going to prosecute you in court. Okay, so that's how it works in the judicial system. In the political system, the House of Representatives takes a look at the evidence and indicts you, and then sends that package over to the Senate, who becomes the courtroom. Okay, and during the impeachment of a president, the Supreme Court, the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court is a presiding judge of that trial. So that's how it goes. So to say that a president has been impeached but not convicted is the same thing as saying somebody was tried for murder and found not guilty. Okay, so in both of those cases, I did not say the person was innocent. I said in both of those cases they are not guilty. Okay, so there's a difference between being innocent and being not guilty, at least technically in the legal sense. So let me see. I missed something, but Theoxera says that's part of the reason I've heard that monetized channels are being cheated by YouTube. I don't care. 60% of the money I make goes to nonprofits anyway. So 30% goes to the local county food bank, and then 30% goes to St. Vincent de Paul, which helps people who are in emergency need of funding, apartments, clothing, and all that kinds of stuff. So we help them. So 60% of any of the money I make here is not mine. It goes to charities. Then of course 10% goes to the church, and then the other 30% I use as far as we are going to improve lighting, microphone, and then we're also going to purchase gifts to give to y'all when I meet certain levels of participation and subscription and things like that. So I don't intend on making any profit off of this channel. So I guess to throw me in there with the people who are worried about that being monetized, I just like seeing the money go to the people who need it. And so by helping with the county food bank and St. Vincent de Paul, I feel like I'm doing that. Wow, Little Lone Pepper, congratulations. Oh, wow, I am so jealous. So, of course, one of my favorite places is Asheville. I was there. I was doing some work for Arvin Meritor in Asheville, and just fell in love with that place. Gorgeous, gorgeous. Now it is a liberal college town, but I loved it. Well, thanks, Stray Kitten. Okay, so let's see where we are. New comments. Why don't you people talk to each other like friends, sharing thoughts? They usually do. I don't know why. When I take a look more, and so tip as a general rule, I would say that 30%, a vast majority of the content on this channel that's worth repeating is coming out of chat. Oh, okay, yeah, and in order to get monetized, you have to run ads, and nobody said anything. I have a feeling they're probably running because I've watched other lives where I get an ad in the middle, or like if I go to New York Prepper, I have to watch an ad and I miss a lot of what he's saying before I even get on the live. So I authorize that in hopes that I can make more money for those who need it. But anyhow. Okay, so how members make decisions. Now, the unfortunate thing is we're seeing there's one party where it's a very much political alignment, party route step, do what the party boss tells you, and the other party, people are basically have their own mindset and follow their constituents a little bit more than does the other party. So it's just weird how it goes. But remember, George Washington warned us that once we get to a two-party system, that the system will be destroyed. And that's what is happening. With our two-party system, we are becoming diametrically opposed. There's this gap in between the two. I'm not sure if we'll ever be able to close the gap. However, I do believe if we could get term limitations in as a constitutional amendment and get rid of professional politicians and return it back to citizen representation instead of professional representation, I think we would have a far better government. Thank you, Triple G. I still need to get up there. I still want to get another Storm's chicken fried steak. Appreciate your donation. Yes, it is. Yes, it really is. Let me see here. So Joel, do you know which group he was with? Where were you stationed most of the time when he was in the service? That'll give me an idea of which group he was in. I was affiliated mostly with 10th Group, although I did spend one tour with First Group. And when I had to go over and do the counterterrorism stuff for the Seoul Olympics in '88, that was with First Group. But the vast majority of the time, I was affiliated with 10th Group because I was a Russian linguist, and 10th Group was European Russian primary scope of responsibility. Let's call it that. Okay, here's another thing. If you take a look at how we originally, let me see. Triple G Farms has a question. Did George W. Bush use findings to get around congressional reporting of covert intelligence activities? I'm not sure what your question is. I can tell you that there is an awful lot of black ops that goes on. Of course, I was part of that for 21 years, and and I still can't really discuss it because it'd just be one of those things I could go to jail for. But anyhow, G18 and G17 have no idea what you're talking about. Sorry. But most of it is classified because of sources. So you want to protect your sources, and so if you cannot find a way to make it viable that it could have been provided by another source, so that the intelligence or black ops themselves are single source, then no, we can't divulge those because it would basically expose our source, and when it exposes our source, then that source gets shut down, and we no longer have information coming from that source. So this is pretty much. That's interesting, Joel. Can't say which post you were stationed on, huh? That's very interesting, especially since NSA was declassified in 1972, and that was the most secret organization we had. The only thing that probably I would say is more secret than that is where Delta Force is located. It's the only one I know of that's still classified. But then again, you're the son of one, and I was one, so I guess you know more than I do. Hey, Gray Man, good to see you. I'm sorry I didn't make yours. I thought you were on after me oh no, it's Tuesdays you're on after me. I'm sorry, I messed that up. That's what I get for thinking, huh? Oh well, can I blame it on Holy Week? Because we have so much going on this week. It's just unbelievable. Yesterday I spent 7 hours at the church, if you can believe that. Okay, so here's a question, and let's see if we can't get some discussion around it in the chat. Is partisanship good for our form of democracy? So is having the two extreme positions good, and having that debate in between them, is it good for our democracy or bad? And that's a good one to ask. Of course, if we listen to Stephen Covey's 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, I think it's habit number 5, and it says, seek first to understand, then to be understood. If we use that principle, then I think we can have opposing forces. But what I find is nobody's willing to listen to anybody anymore. Everybody listens with the intent of formulating a response and not with the intent of understanding where the other person's coming from, if that makes sense. So as long as we remain in that realm of being obstinately protective of our position instead of trying to understand where the other person is coming from, then I think that we aren't going to get anywhere. I told you about the experience I had after church 3 weeks ago, where we were outside. Guy's a Navy SEAL, and we were talking, and he for out of the hour that we talked, he did 50 minutes worth of talking, right? And he kept putting his hand in people's faces and saying, "No, no, no, stop, stop, stop," and then he'd interject with his opinion. And then when we got done, of course, he said, "Oh, we need to have more dialogues like this." And I looked at him. I said, "Dia is Greek for two. Mono is Greek for one. You dominated the conversation. We know very well where you're coming from. You have no idea where we're coming from. This was not a dialogue. This was a monologue. And in order for it to be a dialogue, you need to listen more and speak less." He still spoke to me this last Sunday, so at least we're getting along, so at least he took it to heart. '68, I was Joel. '68, I was a junior in high school. Graduated in '69. And Theoxford says that some partisanship is good to force compromise, but and I think you're probably along that same line I am, Theoxford, in the fact that it's good to have a position. It's good to have a defensible position. It's good to have a defense of your position. It's good to advocate your position, but it also, you have to understand the other party. And that's that whole Hegelian dialectic, and you can look that up. The Hegelian dialectic says that there is a thesis and then there's an antithesis. So there's the point and counterpoint, if you will. And so when the people have a dialogue, that is, they have a true understanding, a true discussion around the meaning of this position and counterposition, or point, counterpoint, or thesis, antithesis, then you have the coming together, or the synthesis. So synthesis is somewhere in the middle between the two extremes. And that synthesis at that point becomes the new thesis. Okay, so you have thesis, antithesis, synthesis, which becomes the new thesis, antithesis, synthesis. So that the Hegelian dialectic says that we're constantly improving our thought process by changing or having an open mind to the other person's position. I don't think we're at that point yet in our society from anybody. So it's kind of strange, but I am of the mind, and this is just Lee's personal opinion, okay? And we could have a debate about this all the time, because I'm not so entrenched in it that I'm willing to fight for it. I'm not so entrenched in it that I'm willing to not listen to other people's positions. I am afraid that we are so divided that we will not be a country much longer after November, after the elections this year, because people are so entrenched in their candidates, so entrenched in their position, that regardless of who wins, the other half will not accept the results of the election. And I think there will be violence as a result of that. Okay, so that's my personal opinion for what it's worth. Let's wait a little bit there, Joel. But I think too much more, and yes, that will be fine. So when nothing gets good, now remember, and Triple G brings up a very good point, that the whole idea, that whole process we talked about passing a bill, how long it takes in the House, how long it takes in the Senate, how long it takes to get in the joint committee to finally get a passed bill, that's supposed to take a long time. And I remember where I was going back before I got off track. And so with our citizen representatives, now remember, citizen representatives, but we had professional politicians in the Senate. So because the Senate at that time, and this was before the 17th Amendment, the Senate at that time was representing the states. They were basically upholding the 10th Amendment, okay, states' rights. And then, of course, the House of Representatives represented the citizens' rights, the 9th Amendment. And but then the 17th Amendment, we changed that so that senators are no longer appointed by the state legislatures. They're re-elected by the people. So now we have two different groups of the House, or two different chambers of the legislature representing the citizens and nobody representing the states, which means that the state's 10th Amendment is basically null and devoid because there's nobody there to support or enforce it. So the House was only 2 years because they were volunteers, basically, non-professional. So they would go for 3 months. You know, the thought process is you're going to be back talking to your constituents and everything else. Congress will have a 3-month term. You go to DC for 3 months. You're there for those 3 months. You pass all the bills, then you go back home. Listen to your constituents and tell them what you did. Okay. Now that all the House of Representatives lives in DC because it's a full-time job instead of a citizen job. Okay. So that's how our country has transformed over the course of time. Let me see. I agree. Sorry, my mouse clicked somewhere I didn't want to go, and it took me off the air for a minute. But where was I? There was a comment up here. Oh, there we go. Yeah, I think so. My political affiliation is I consider myself a constitutional conservative. And so, you know, if I'm asked my party, that's what I declare as my party is constitutional conservative. I believe that we need to follow the law as it's written. And if the law is insufficient, then let's change the law rather than not enforce it. Because, you know, when you get to the point where you don't know which laws are being enforced and which ones aren't, you know, it's kind of like driving down the speedway or freeway, and you don't know whether the speed limit that's posted is enforced or not. You don't know whether the left turn only lane is left turn only or not, because you just don't know, because people aren't enforcing what they should be enforcing. So let's enforce the laws as they are written, and if they are insufficient, let's change them. That's my rationale for how I believe it should be. Yeah, we've had serious discussions here in this household about Robert Kennedy. It's a breath of fresh air. I will tell you that. You know, his family historically has been extremely liberal. Of course, his uncle Teddy was extremely liberal, probably one of the most liberal Democrats that there were. But you know, I don't know. He says a lot of things that make a lot of sense. So, you know, I think that's the whole thing: is you got to listen, and unless you have a point that is a make or breaker, you know, make or break decision with somebody. You say, either you do this, or I can't support you. When you come to that point, then that's your decision. You know, you have to follow that decision. And but I'm going to say that you know, if you weigh it on the vast majority versus the minority, Mr. Kennedy has some very good points. I think he's an attractive candidate, and I think he can probably attract a lot of good votes. So from both sides. I believe he will attract more from the conservative left than he will from the liberal right, but he will attract votes from both sides. I don't know if I told you, Little and Pepper, but my best friend was from Smithfield, North Carolina, and we used to drive down there. When I was at NSA, we used to drive down there on the weekends, drink White Lightning and fish fries and all that kinds of stuff. And I did find out that when you have this big tub of White Lightning with fruit down at the bottom, don't eat the fruit. You know, this Texan found out about North Carolina fruit, and I don't think I've ever been that ill before in my life. Um, so let me see. Okay. We are getting down here. I try not to have any enemies. Like that would be hypocritical of me if I said you're an enemy. If I said anybody's an enemy, you have a valid point. You have a way of thinking. I have a way of thinking, and what we need to do is we need to find a way where we can find a middle ground. And how can we get through this? At the end of this video, I'm going to close it the same way I always do. I'm going to read number 6, verses 24, 25, 26, and I'm going to tell you that we're all in this together, so we can come through the other side together. Please be kind, polite, and respectful to each other, because togetherness is the key. If I'm out there foaming enemies, then I'm not foaming togetherness. And I sincerely believe we are in historical times in our country. And this is a make or break moment. This year is a make or break year. And we have to find ways to unite as people of one country and defend our country against the outside aggressors instead of against the inside aggressors. And so I firmly believe we need to find a way to work together, not to work against each other. And part of that means coming to understanding of where we're coming from, so we can better understand where we come from, so we can find a common solution. And that's what I'm all about, is common solutions. What can we both live with? We may not be the happiest or the best possible solution for either of us, but how can we find one that both of us can live with? And that's what I want. And that's why, I think that's what our founding fathers wanted, because that's why I call myself a constitutional conservative. Change in our country should happen slowly and not meteorically, as we have seen over the course of the last, I'm going to say, since probably the millennium, since about 2000. My generation is partly to blame for that. The free love, anti-war movement of I'm going to say probably starting at about 10 of 68. I will say it probably started 10 of 68 during the Vietnam War. And that's when we saw my generation rising up against the government. And, that's where we have that dichotomy that has happened. Yeah, you lost me there for a second, Holly. I'm sorry. That's my mouse. On this Eiche, which is a German form of oak, it just does not reflect. So I have to put it on a notepad. So I have this mouse pad here, and sometimes when I'm trying to do something, it goes off the mouse pad. I lose control of the mouse, and boop, it took me off the air. So I had to come back on real quick. Okay. So staff and support agencies, there's all kinds of things that happen. The Congressional Budget Office, you have the Congressional Research Service, which takes a look at theoreticals and says, if we do this, what will happen? If we do that, what will happen? This is a bunch of think tank guessers, is what it really is. And then, of course, we have the Government Accountability Office, the GAO. They're the ones that come out and say, you wasted money. You could have done it this way and gotten it better. Or, there's this much money missing. We don't know where it went. We can't account for it, and all that kinds of stuff. So they're tracking the actual money that's spent, and how was it spent, and was it spent wisely? And then the third one is Congressional Budget Office. So the Congressional Budget Office was created in 1974 to evaluate the economic effect of different spending programs and to provide information on the cost of proposed policies. So now, and remember, what they're trying to do is they're doing their best guesswork of 10 years out, okay? And so anything that the CBO does, the Congressional Budget Office, is always on a 10-year horizon, okay? I might encourage you to take a less confrontational point of view or standpoint. It has been said that you can attract more people with honey than you can with thorns. And so sometimes, there are ways to get people to see your point of view and even to concur with you. And it does not have to be a confrontational way, but to each his own. And you asked a question earlier, Mr. Eichner, that I think that let me give you my impression, okay? And so this is just Lee. I'm sure you have a close group of friends, okay? And you're at a party, let's say, and somebody you don't know suddenly comes up to your group. There's 3 or 4 of you discussing personal things or discussing things that you have opinions on. You've coalesced together because your opinions are pretty close to each other. That you support, agree, you share a lot of ideas. People don't ostracize you for it. They don't say negative things. They may offer you encouragement. They may even offer you counter opinions in a polite and respectful way. And then you take a look at that and you judge it. And this other person walks into the group and all of a sudden just starts throwing out comments, okay, that may or may not be the same thing that group has had in the past. And so I will tell you, I am seeing less activity last week and this week in my normal supporters. And the change is that we have somebody who's inserted themselves into the group saying, you guys aren't talking enough. And could it be that there is an outsider who is coming in and trying to force their opinion on other people who may or may not be willing to learn it and may or may not yet have any trust in what you have to say? And so with that, one of the things is in St. Vincent de Paul. St. Vincent de Paul said that when we go out and we help people financially, when we help people through life crises and everything else, and part of our mission is also a missionary mission. So we are attempting, this guy here, St. Francis of Assisi, he said, remember that sometimes you're the only Bible that a person will ever read. So it's your actions, your behavior, the way you treat people. That's what people see and what people interpret. Well, St. Vincent de Paul took that idea just a little bit further, and he says, it's not that easy to convince people to believe your religion, because people don't trust people they don't know and like. And so to try to proselytize to people that they don't know and like, they aren't going to listen to you. So part of that, of helping people out of their calamities, is also helping them with emotional support and friendship. And then when you have that emotional support and friendship and people know you, trust you, and like you, then they listen to you, okay? And they accept your opinion more readily. So, part of that is gaining trust. And part of gaining trust is being consistent, being respectful, being polite, being kind. And so that's what I think is going on. I think that, a lot of these people here, gosh, there's been some fantastic people. We've been together 2 years, and just some of them are really phenomenal people, really great people with great ideas. And so sometimes it's best to remember we have 2 ears and 1 mouth. So it's best to listen twice as much as we speak. And then when we speak cautiously so that we aren't offending other people. Let me see. Hi, Sumi. Welcome, my favorite Canadian. Okay, so balancing institutional power. One of the things, and this was, oh gosh, what was that Supreme Court decision that declared that corporations are entities, are beings, are people, and afforded the same rights as a person in government. That was, gosh, President Obama really, if you remember, that's where he, for the first time ever, castigated the Supreme Court Citizens United decision, the Citizens United decision. That's what it was. And President Obama didn't like it. And he really castigated the Supreme Court publicly during his State of the Union speech. But that's what this is talking about. Should institutions, businesses, corporations, universities be considered people? Because remember, it's people who are afforded the rights of the Bill of Rights and not necessarily institutions. So what basically the Citizens United said was that corporations are collective groups of people, and therefore, since it's a collection of people, they're afforded the same rights under the Bill of Rights as the people who are representing that organization. So yes, they are afforded protections under, let's say, the 5 protections of the First Amendment. So what do you think? Should we? Shouldn't we? How does that go? How does that get involved with all this? I don't shoot, but around here, people can set up a target and shoot anywhere, anytime, as long as they're not in city limits. Well, pretty much the same here in Texas. You can even do it inside the city limits. For example, when I was HR director for an electric co-op, inside the city limits, we had enough land where we could declare one of our fields as a pigeon hunting area. So for 3 weeks in the spring and 3 weeks in the fall, I could issue permits to our employees and their family members to come onto our property and pigeon hunt. And that was inside the city limits. So yeah, there are times even inside the city limits here in Texas that you can hunt. And I think that was, and you're right, Triple G, because we had 50 acres. Let me see here. I like, oh yeah, Little Lone Prepper. That sounds great. I am ecstatic for you. Even though you have to dig a new septic system, that's okay. As long as your septic system and your well aren't too close together, that's or have to get that way. So let me see here. Your God's name, my God's name, probably different, but it's sans God. Okay. Don't understand it, so I won't comment on it. But thank you for sharing. Okay, we're at 59 minutes and 33 seconds. And guess what? We are at the check yourself. So next week, when we get together, we're going to be talking about Article 2, basically, which is Chapter 8 in this book. And that is going to be the presidency. So you can kind of, if you have your little Constitution available to you, I'll tell you what, send me an email. If you don't have one of these, I have a box of them out in the garage. My dad in town was called the flag man when he was alive. He would always pass out. He spent money on these little American flag lapel pins, and he would go around town giving those away. And when he did, he also gave away a copy of the Constitution. So I have when he passed, I inherited his flags. I've given all those away except for 2. And I still have a box full of Constitutions. So if you would like a Constitution, you can get it. You can get one of these, just like this. I think they've changed it a little bit where it's more like an American flag on the front now. A couple ways you can get it for free by writing your congressman or your senator and just saying, please send me a pocket copy of the Constitution. Or you can email me and send me your mailing address and I'll send you a copy. And no charge or anything. I'll just put it in the mail and send it to you. Okay. So that's where we are. So let's go back to Numbers chapter 6, verses 24, 25, and 26. I think I have it memorized. The Lord bless you and keep you. The Lord let his face shine upon you and be gracious to you. The Lord look upon you kindly and grant you peace. I do have it memorized. Wow. So do me a favor. Poo-poo's about ready to hit the oscillator. Okay. The air mover. And, France is now saying, and the U.S. Secretary of State has warned that all U.S. citizens of France to get out, that a terrorist attack is imminent in France. I believe that there's a terrorist attack imminent in the U.S. I believe that these 80,000 unaccompanied single military-age Chinese men who have crossed the border, as well as all of the identified, and remember, there were 20,000 people who were either on convict list who were supposed to be deported or on terrorist watch list, that because they weren't processed quickly enough, the statute of limitations ran out and they were released into the United States. So there's all kinds of bad stuff going on. I'm going to encourage you. Please be cautious. Please prepare. Starting in April, the first Friday in April, starting at 8:00, I'm going to purchase some time with StreamYard. And so beginning at 8:00 on Fridays on YouTube, I will be doing a basically 1 hour prepping show. And we're going to be talking about how to create a plan. What are the threats? How do you prepare against those threats and things like that? So U.S. Credit rating has been downgraded again. BRICS is encouraging all of the oil-producing OPEC to not trade in dollars anymore, but to use BRICS currency. And so, I mean, there's so many things going on. The world is rapidly changing, and we are being left behind. So things are going to change dramatically here in the near future. I think we need to be prepared for that to happen. And how can we prepare for that to happen? And because remember, I try to be results oriented, solutions oriented, and not necessarily so much scare oriented. So with that, please remember that we're all in this together. Thank you for being kind, polite, and respectful to each other, because that's what it's going to take to attract people so that we can all get through this, because togetherness is the key. Take care, everybody. Thank you. See you tomorrow night. Tomorrow night, we're doing week number 7 of food storage for preppers. Some great stuff in here. I'm also going to do a little bit of talk about soups and some of the things you can get real quick that will get you ahead in the survival game. Take care, everybody. Have a nice evening. Bye-bye. I have to get past all these warnings in order to get to the stop. Let me see. Prepper dog. Blue cities are done by angry prepper. Okay, there we go. Exit stream. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.